Step aside. The words hit Malcolm Hayes like a brick. His grip tightens around the handle of his sleek black carry-on. Around him, the security line at JFK moves briskly. Businessmen, families, tourists, passing through unchecked. Malcolm exhales, jaw clenched. He's seen this play out before. "Is there a problem?" he asks, his voice measured. The TSA agent, a stocky man with a buzz cut, doesn't answer. Instead, he gestures to the side, eyes scanning Malcolm's tailored suit like it doesn't belong to him. Behind him, a white couple breezes through security without a second glance. "Random screening," the officer mutters, guiding him toward a separate checkpoint. Malcolm doesn't bother arguing. He knows how this works. Protest too much, and things escalate. But as he steps out of line, a bitter thought lingers. How many times will he have to prove he belongs? The officer yanks open Malcolm's briefcase, fingers rifling through neatly organized documents and personal belongings. "Hey, careful with that," Malcolm says, watching a monogrammed pen roll across the table. No response. His wallet is flipped open, platinum and black credit cards fanned out like a deck of suspicion. The officer plucks one. "This yours?" His tone drips with doubt. Malcolm forces a calm breath. "All of them are." A second officer, younger but just as rigid, leans over his shoulder. "That's a lot of cards. What do you do for a living?" "I run a business," Malcolm replies coolly. The older officer smirks. "Must be doing pretty well." He scans the cards again, lingering too long. Malcolm doesn't miss the glance exchange between them, the silent, unspoken assumption hanging in the air. "Sir, this is just a routine check," the younger officer says, lips curling into a half smile that doesn't reach his eyes. Malcolm lets out a slow breath. Right? Routine. He's heard it too many times. Random selection. Standard procedure. Always the same excuse. Always the same people chosen. "You're free to leave after we verify a few things," the older agent adds, flipping through Malcolm's passport like he expects to find something damning. Malcolm crosses his arms. "And if I was someone else?" The officer chuckles. "Sir, let's not make this into something it's not." The younger officer shifts uncomfortably, eyes scanning Malcolm's ID again. Something flickers across his face. Recognition. "Hey, hold on," he mutters, leaning toward his colleague. Their voices drop to a whisper. Malcolm watches, curiosity pricking at the back of his mind. The older officer frowns. "What? That can't be right." He snatches the ID, his expression shifting from smug amusement to something closer to panic. Malcolm notices the shift, the stiff posture, the quick nervous glances. "Is there a problem?" he asks, this time with an edge. The officer clears his throat. "Just a moment." He turns away, muttering something into his radio. A third officer approaches, scanning Malcolm with a different gaze. One of delayed realization. Malcolm tilts his head. He's not just another black man in a suit to them anymore. And that realization makes them nervous. The air is thick with unspoken words. Malcolm watches them struggle between what they assumed and what they now know. "Sir, we're going to need you to wait here," the older officer says, voice tight. But before the audience learns why, darkness. A flashback begins, the echoes of a past confrontation, the roots of today's moment unraveling. A memory of another time, another place, but the same underlying fight. Because for Malcolm Hayes, this battle started long before today, and it's far from over. "Malcolm, listen to me." His mother's voice still rings in his ears, a lesson carved into his soul. You have to be twice as good to get half as much. That's just how it is. As a child, he didn't understand. But growing up in a neighborhood where opportunities were rare and expectations were low, it became clear. He saw his mother work double shifts, watched his friends get overlooked despite their talent. The system wasn't broken. It was built this way. Now standing in a penthouse overlooking the city, those words still linger. Because no matter how far he's come, the fight isn't over. Scholarship. That word became his escape. Malcolm wasn't just smart, he was relentless. Every late-night study session, every debate win, every perfect test score was a step towards something bigger. Harvard Business School. He walked onto campus, knowing he was the exception, not the rule. In every lecture hall, every networking event, he was often the only black man in the room. "So what sport do you play?" someone once asked. Malcolm just smiled. Let them assume. Let them underestimate him. Because one day, they wouldn't have a choice but to recognize his name, not as an athlete, but as a force. Wealth didn't shield him. The first time someone tossed their car keys at him outside a five-star restaurant, assuming he was the valet, he let it slide. The second time, he simply walked away. But the third time, "Sir, can I help you?" The security guard's hand hovered over his radio as Malcolm unlocked his own front door. The assumptions never stopped. In boardrooms, he was questioned more, scrutinized harder. "Are you sure these numbers are correct?" Whose idea was this strategy? Even at the top, he had to prove, again and again, that he belonged. Success didn't erase bias. It just made the contrast sharper. His phone buzzed. A personal invitation to an exclusive business summit. Only the most powerful minds in the industry were invited. Guest of honor. He should have felt pride. Instead, a familiar unease crept in. Would he be seen as a leader? Or would they still search for reasons to doubt him? As he packed his bags for the flight, his mother's voice echoed once more. Twice as good. He zipped up his suitcase, straightened his tie, and exhaled. Because no matter how high he climbed, there would always be someone ready to pull him back down. And this flight? It was just the beginning. "Are you sure you're in the right line?" The words hang in the air, thick with condescension. Malcolm looks up from his phone, meeting the officer's smirk. TSA pre-check, first-class boarding pass. Every requirement met. Yet here he is, being questioned, his legitimacy under silent trial. "Is there a problem?" he asks evenly, sliding his passport across the counter. Officer Bradley barely glances at it, his fingers drumming against the podium. The skepticism in his eyes says it all. Malcolm feels the familiar weight pressing down. This isn't new. He exhales, keeping his expression unreadable. He knows where this is going. There are two ways this ends. Option 1, demand answers, call it out, make a scene. Option 2, keep his cool, hand over the documents, and move forward. Experience has taught him the cost of the first choice. Boarding pass and ID, Bradley repeats, slower this time. Malcolm doesn't flinch. He's played this game before. "Right here," he replies, tone steady. The officer scans the ticket as if searching for something, anything, to justify the hesitation. A beat passes, then another. Finally, with a barely concealed frown, Bradley hands it back. Step ahead for screening. But Malcolm knows it's far from over. "Random selection," Bradley mutters, eyes shifting toward another officer. Malcolm forces down the irritation rising in his chest. Random. Of course, two other travelers, both white, glide through security without a second glance. He steps aside as another agent gestures toward a separate lane. Arms out, the man instructed, voice disinterested. The process is slow, deliberate. Every movement feels designed to prove a point. His fists clench at his sides, but he unclenches them just as quickly. This isn't about fairness, it's about control. And he refuses to give them the reaction they're looking for. Malcolm walks through the metal detector. Beep. His brows knit together. He's worn the same belt, these same shoes, on countless flights. Step back and try again, Bradley instructs, arms crossed. He does. Beep. He exhales through his nose, slowly removing his belt, his watch. Another step. Beep. Now a few passengers are watching. The murmurs begin. What's the holdup? Someone mutters. Malcolm's jaw tightens. He knows the answer. Bradley steps forward, barely suppressing a grin. We'll need to conduct a full search. Of course they will. Arms out, Malcolm obeys, suppressing the bitter taste in his mouth as gloved hands pat down his shoulders, his back, his legs. It's slow, unnecessarily thorough. Nearby, a woman clutches her purse a little tighter. A businessman checks his watch, sighing. This is ridiculous, someone finally says. But no one steps in. Bradley opens Malcolm's bag, rifling through his neatly folded clothes. Anything sharp, illegal, or dangerous? The officer asks, voice dripping with fake politeness. Malcolm meets his gaze, steady. Only the assumptions you walked in with. Bradley pauses, but Malcolm already knows. This isn't about finding anything. It's about making a point, and they just have. Feet apart, arms out. Malcolm obeys, jaw tight. The officer's hands linger, pressing too hard, moving too slow. Whispered murmurs rise from the onlookers. A few pull out their phones. Others glance at each other, their expressions ranging from discomfort to silent approval. He's been through airport security 100 times before, but never like this. Never this slow, never this deliberate. A second officer joins in, running a scanner over him, stopping at his wrist. Nice watch, he mutters. His grip tightens. That real? Malcolm doesn't answer. He's done explaining himself. The officer smirks as he already has an answer in mind. More hands, more stalling. A spectacle designed to degrade. His chest rises and falls in controlled breaths. But inside, the frustration coils. This isn't about security. This is about making a statement, and the message is loud and clear. Bradley crosses his arms. What line of work are you in? Malcolm exhales slowly. He knows this game. Business, he replies, keeping it short. Bradley scoffs. Business, huh? His eyes flick to the tailored suit, the polished shoes. Must be a hell of a business. Malcolm levels his gaze. It is. There it is, that flicker of disbelief. The silent accusation hidden behind forced politeness. Success, when wrapped in brown skin, is always met with suspicion. Bradley chuckles, shaking his head. Are you sure you're not in the wrong business? The words aren't casual. They're sharp, loaded. A challenge disguised as curiosity. Malcolm doesn't take the bait. He's heard it all before. Bradley leans in. What's the company? Hayes Consulting. A pause. Then a slow, exaggerated nod. CEO, huh? Malcolm holds his gaze. That's right. Bradley exhales through his nose, amused. Sure you are. The words land like a slap. Like he's heard this lie before. Like men like Malcolm can't hold titles like that. A chuckle from another officer. A smirk exchanged. Malcolm stays silent, but the air shifts. The old weight settles on his shoulders. The one that never really leaves. The one that whispers that no matter how far he's come, they'll always try to pull him back down. Malcolm rolls his shoulders. I'd like to speak to a supervisor. Bradley's smirk disappears. He glances at the other officer. A silent signal. Then, Sir, we found something suspicious in your bag. The words slice through the air. Sharp, calculated. Passengers shift. A woman clutches her purse. A man takes a step back. Malcolm's heartbeat doesn't spike. He's too familiar with this game. Accusation first, evidence second. That's how this works. The officer lifts his laptop bag, gripping it like it's filled with explosives. We're going to need to take a look. Gasps ripple through the crowd. The tension thickens. A mother pulls her child closer. Malcolm clenches his jaw. He already knows what's inside that bag, and he knows exactly what they're trying to do. Bradley unzips the bag with exaggerated caution, drawing out the moment. All eyes watch. The performance continues. He reaches in, slowly, dramatically. Then he pulls out a tablet, business documents, a leather notebook. The silence is deafening. Bradley's fingers tighten around the folder, flipping through neatly organized reports. His smirk falters. The weight of the crowd's anticipation presses down. But there's nothing to find. Nothing to justify the suspicion, the humiliation, the whispered doubts. Malcolm raises an eyebrow. Well? A muscle twitches in Bradley's jaw. He knows they've lost their moment. The accusation was made. The damage was done. But there's nothing left to hold him on. For now. Bradley tosses the bag back onto the table. Looks like you're free to go. No apology, no acknowledgement, just a dismissal, like none of this ever happened. Malcolm's fists curl. He forces himself to unclench them. The humiliation clings to his skin, thick like smoke. He hears the murmurs, feels the stars. Some in sympathy, others in silent agreement with what just happened. He doesn't move, not yet. Bradley meets his gaze, smirking. Problem? Malcolm exhales, forcing his expression blank. No, not yet. I need your names. Bradley's grin widens. Good luck with that. The other officer chuckles. They both know. The system protects them. Complaints disappear. Cameras miss key moments. Random selection is the perfect excuse. Malcolm studies them, his mind working. Their laughter is sharp, full of certainty. They think this is over. It's not. He straightens his suit, grips his bag, and turns away. But he's not done yet. A voice crackles over the airport speakers. Attention VIP guests, Mr. Malcolm Hayes, your lounge is now ready. Silence. Every head turns. Recognition flickers in the eyes of the onlookers. Whispers rise. The weight of his name shifts the atmosphere in an instant. He sees it, sees Bradley's smirk fade, sees uncertainty creep in. Malcolm exhales, rolling his shoulders. He lets the moment hang, then adjusts his watch. Now, it's his turn to walk away. And this time, every step feels like a victory. Before Malcolm can react, another officer rushes toward Bradley, leaning in close. The hushed exchange is brief but telling. Malcolm catches snippets. Words like VIP, urgent, and serious mistake. The shift is instant. The arrogance drains from Bradley's face, replaced by tight-lipped unease. His grip on control, once firm, now slips through his fingers. Malcolm folds his arms, waiting. He's been in this position before, cornered, scrutinized, doubted, but this time, something's different. He watches as Bradley stiffens, glancing at Malcolm with a flicker of something unfamiliar. Not authority, not disdain. Something dangerously close to fear. Footsteps echo across the terminal as a white-haired man in a sharp suit approaches. The airport manager. His presence alone shifts the atmosphere. His expression is taut with regret as he stops in front of Malcolm, clearing his throat. Mr. Hayes, I must extend my sincerest apologies for this egregious error, he says, his voice carrying across the terminal, ensuring every onlooker hears. I assure you, this is not how we conduct business. Malcolm says nothing, watching as the man's gaze darts nervously between him and Bradley. Passengers linger, their curiosity piqued. Phones remain lifted, recording. Bradley shifts uncomfortably, his usual confidence cracking under the weight of the moment. The manager turns to the officer, his tone sharpening. We'll be reviewing this incident immediately. Mr. Hayes deserves nothing less than the utmost respect. Bradley swallows hard, his knuckles tightening at his sides. Silence stretches as the manager continues. Mr. Hayes is here on business. A distinguished guest at a high-profile event attended by some of the world's leading CEOs. The very organization that funds leadership training for security personnel like you. The color drains from Bradley's face. He glances at Malcolm's suit again, the luxury watch he once scrutinized. But now, realization grips him. The man he targeted isn't just another traveler. He holds influence in the very system Bradley thought he could manipulate without consequence. Whispers ripple through the onlookers. Someone mutters, "Unbelievable," Another, bet they wouldn't have treated him like that if they knew. Malcolm exhaled slowly, letting the moment sink in. The humiliation they forced upon him now swings in his favor. Bradley's authority shrinks under the weight of his mistake. His power, once unchecked, now wavers on the brink of collapse. Malcolm steps forward, slow and deliberate, meeting Bradley's gaze with unwavering calm. So, what were you saying about my ID not checking out? Bradley's jaw tightens, his eyes darting toward the manager. But there's no saving him now. The words Malcolm spoke in the beginning, his credentials, his right to be there, now carry a weight Bradley can no longer dismiss. The officer shifts, lips parting as if searching for a defense, but none come. Malcolm doesn't need an apology. He needs accountability. And right now, the silence hanging between them is more powerful than any excuse Bradley can muster. Bradley stammers, his usual composure in tatters. But Malcolm doesn't need his words. He lifts a hand, a simple gesture that cuts off whatever weak explanation Bradley was about to offer. The officer stops mid-sentence, his breath catching. The weight of the moment is undeniable. The same authority he wielded so carelessly is now stripped from him, leaving him exposed. The crowd watches in rapt attention. The whispers, once about Malcolm's supposed wrongdoing, have shifted. Now, all eyes are on Bradley, the officer who thought he could act with impunity. The tables have turned, and everyone sees it. Malcolm's voice is steady, his words carrying more force than any confrontation ever could. I'll be filing a formal complaint, and trust me, I know people who take these things seriously. Bradley flinches, the weight of those words settling deep. He knows what that means. No more unchecked authority. No more quiet cover-ups. His mistakes, this moment, will follow him beyond this terminal. The manager nods grimly. We'll be in touch, Mr. Hayes. Rest assured this won't be ignored. Malcolm simply nods, then turns, walking toward his gate. Justice isn't fully served. Not yet. But today, for once, the system didn't win. The video spreads like wildfire. Clips of Malcolm standing rigid as officers pat him down flood social media. The hashtags explode. # airport racism, # justice for Malcolm. The footage is impossible to ignore. Thousands repost, influencers demand accountability, and news outlets pick it up. A comment under one video reads, "This happens every day, but this time, they messed with the wrong man." Malcolm watches the outrage grow. The world is paying attention now. By morning, the airline CEO is on damage control. A public statement floods their social pages. "We sincerely apologize for the unacceptable treatment of Mr. Hayes. A full investigation is underway." Malcolm scoffs. They aren't sorry, just scared. But he knows this is only the beginning. Sitting before the camera, Malcolm exhales. He leans forward, voice steady yet firm. This isn't just about me. It's about the thousands who go through this every day. Without cameras, without outrage, we have to do better. His words resonate. The interview trends instantly, sparking a heated debate. TV anchors dissect his experience. Activists push for reform, and the conversation deepens. This moment won't fade. It's a movement now. News breaks. Officer Bradley has been placed on suspension pending investigation. TSA announces an internal review of its racial bias training. Malcolm smirks at the headline. It's not justice. Not yet. But it's a step. They wanted him humiliated. Instead, they handed him a microphone. The VIP lounge doors open. This time, no officers, no skepticism, just a polite nod. "Mr. Hayes, welcome." Malcolm walks in, unbothered. No interrogation, no accusations, just respect. As he settles in, his phone vibrates. Another news alert. He smiles. This fight isn't over, but today, he won. "Has this ever happened to you?" Malcolm's voice lingers. The silence that follows is louder than any answer. "Have you ever been judged before you even spoke?" Stopped, questioned. because of your skin, your name, your presence. Drop your story in the comments. Let the world hear your truth. This conversation doesn't stop here. Racism thrives in silence. Break that silence. Hit like, share this video, and subscribe to keep the fight alive. One voice can start change. Millions can make it unstoppable. Change starts with awareness, but it lasts when we refuse to look away. Keep talking, keep sharing, keep questioning. Because if we stop now, this story will fade, and history will repeat itself.